Hello, I'm Landon Martin, and this is the individual creative critical reflection for the ACE Media Studies Paper 1 Intro to a Movie project. So, starting with the first question, how does your project use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? So, the main premise of Gale is that the main character, whose name is Gale, her father is in jail for reasons we find out later in the movie. Um, and he gets out. That's what we find out right after the opening sequence we have. We had a planned out thing where like there's dialogue and she figures out that her dad is out of jail. But we decided to scrap that because it didn't quite fit with the attitude or the atmosphere of her floating on the water on the paddleboard. But the main premise is that it's family pressure, it's societal pressure, it's school pressure, it's all of these pressures on this main character who just wants to get on with her life, just wants to live, and feels like she can't be who she wants to be or do what she wants to do because of all these pressures by other people. So I feel like that would help to relate to a lot of people who are in their teenage years. It would help represent, the teenage social group and represent depression, and maybe some other mental illnesses that her family members might have and have to deal with, and how that kind of puts pressure on her as well. Um, so moving on to the second question, how does your project engage with audiences and how would it be distributed as a real media text? So I think the main engagement is that the film itself, it really appeals to two very separate but similar audiences in a way. It appeals to the late teenage years, maybe high schoolers, who experienced, maybe some kinds of depression when they were in high school, who faced these kind of pressures, who maybe had similar situations with their parents being in jail and may not have had ideal home lives and, all of the pressures and stresses that are caused by life that aren't really shown in a lot of uh, movie culture, at least until recently. Like, you think of like the stereotypical high school situation with the individual cliques and the insane drama and the love triangles that are in TV shows, and that's not entirely realistic. And that's kind of what we wanted to do with this. We wanted to have like a more realistic tone that would appeal and engage really with that teenage audience. But then there's also the second audience, which would be adults, maybe in 30s. I mean, anywhere from 20s, 30s, 40s. I feel like any older than that, you'd kind of get out of the range of what people experienced in high school. Um, but you know, older people who kind of like want to in a way reminisce or feel nostalgic about their teenage years and maybe kind of relate to how their high school experience was in terms of the stresses and maybe they had similar situations as Gale and they felt the same pressures. So those are our two like main audiences. As to how it would be distributed, um, this wouldn't be a triple A, mainstream movie release that would release in theaters all across the country, all across the globe. I don't think it would be that kind of film. I think this would be more of like the Lady Bird or some of these smaller movies that have that a lot of times are shown off at uh, film festivals, film conventions. An indie movie, if you would say, and would garner a small audience. Maybe it would be put onto one of the streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and there it would gather attention. Most movies today that are really popular in the cinemas aren't your wholesome or realistic feel good movies anymore. It's your big action movies, your Marvel movies, your superhero movies, your stereotypical action movies. And so that's why I feel like this film would be perfect as a streaming service movie, that would win awards in film festivals, stuff like that overall. Um, and moving on to the third question, how did your production skills develop throughout the project? Um, I mainly did the filming as my part of the project. My partner, Katie Morris, she did a lot of the all of the acting. I'm not an actor; she's a theater kid. She has a lot more acting skill than I did, and that was really shown in our practice project that we did at the beginning of the school year back in November, where we made like a intro film, like a practice for the final. And I acted in that, and it wasn't particularly good, and it didn't feel as natural as it could have. And that's because I don't really have the kind of acting skill that my partner has. Um, and they didn't require a lot of like heavy acting for our intro. It's just Gale, the main character, floating on a paddleboard. Um, but I was the film. I did a lot of the shots. Decided I was kind of like the director of sorts. I decided where things were going to go, how we were going to film things, different angles and shots we were going to do. Um, and I realized in combination with like the practice intro that we did, um, I really figured out how to do certain things. And like a big thing was panning shots. I had a rough time trying to get those stable. And over time I figured out how to do it pretty well, I'd say. You know, we had an issue where the cameras that we had, we wanted to have like a zoomed in shot that would kind of like maybe zoom out. Um, and that didn't work out too well because when we tried to zoom in with the cameras, the quality would drop drastically as is what happens when you zoom in. And it was just with the lighting, it was just really bad. So it was hard to get a zoomed in shot. So what we decided to do instead is I was saying maybe we could do it so where the paddleboard comes up closer to like the dock edge, but away from like the dock, so it's just the water in the view of the camera, so that it's not really a zoomed in shot, but it looks zoomed in because of how close the paddleboard is to the camera. Um, and so it's just little things like that where uh, I feel like my skills developed in that way. Also just managing the camera, figuring out another little trick was, starting to film about 5, 6 seconds before we actually started to do something, and then waiting 5 or 6 seconds after I thought what we needed to stop filming, so that we had like that extra little bit of leeway for the cutting of the shots. And so I think that really showed, how I, as a partner in this project, developed my mainly the directing and camera filming skills. And for the fourth question, how did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online into this project? So, we used our phones for film and capture. I had an iPhone 12. My partner had a Grove phone as well. They're pretty much the same kind of camera quality. Um, and so we didn't really need anything else. And so we integrated, if you want to say, we integrated, using our phone cameras and their videos, transitioning them onto our computers, and then using editing software for that. Editing it all together, creating the transitions, the fades, adding in the music, deciding when the music was going to, up in volume and then decrease, adding in the text for the credits. Um, and, having access to all of this online uh, information on, like, if we ever had an issue figuring out how to do a certain thing, we could just simply look it up. Um, it really helped. We didn't do anything like crazy special in terms of like software. We just used some basic free software, and then hardware. I have a pretty good computer, um, and then mainly the online aspect. If you want to consider, I'm using an online voice recorder right now, and then I'm going to transition this file into an MP4, and then download it and add it into my blog site. And so, that's kind of an integration of technology as well. Um, to where overall, I think that I did quite a good job with this. Um, I have to thank my partner a lot as well. Uh, Me and her bounced off a lot of ideas. We initially wanted to start off with a horror movie, but then that kind of didn't work out too well, and so we transitioned into more of a realistic movie with themes of depression, themes of mental illness, and uh, a lot of themes that movies don't really touch a lot. And so that's why I'm quite proud of my project. I'm quite proud of the work that was done, and I think it all went over well. And so that was my individual creative critical reflection. Once again, I'm Landon Martin. Thanks for listening.